In the small, dusty village of Rampur, there lived a boy named Ryu. Now, Ryu was a bright young soul, with dreams that were bigger than the endless sky above his head. But there was a small problem. His habits were lazier than a buffalo wallowing in the mud on a scorching summer afternoon. Every single morning, his mother's voice would cut through his dreams. "Ryu, get up. The sun is already frying dirt outside." And every morning, Ryu would mumble, "Just 5 more minutes, Ma," and then dive back into sleep for at least another hour. He genuinely wanted to achieve something great. He would look at the successful people in the nearby town with admiration, the shop owners with their bustling stores, the respected teachers, even the local constable who walked with such pride and purpose in his crisp uniform. Ryu wanted that for himself. He wanted to be someone. But the gap between his dreams and his reality was a chasm called discipline. He just couldn't stick to anything. One day, he'd wake up fired with motivation, declaring he would exercise every single morning. The very next day, that motivation would vanish, and he'd be flying kites on the roof instead. One evening, he'd create a detailed study plan, determined to top his exams. The next, he'd be gossiping with friends, the plan forgotten. Ryu had plenty of dreams, but zero discipline to build the ladder to reach them. One quiet evening, as the sun began to paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, Ryu's path crossed with Gopal Kaka's. Gopal Kaka was an elderly, retired army man who lived a simple life at the edge of the village. His life was a testament to routine. Every morning, like clockwork, Gopal Kaka would rise at 4 a.m. Ryu would sometimes see him, a silhouette in the pre-dawn light, sweeping his courtyard with methodical strokes. Then would come the push-ups, a series of precise, controlled movements. After that, he'd sit with a book, lost in its pages, before tending to his small, neat garden. Ryu was mystified. He thought, why does he do all this? He doesn't have a boss to answer to, no school to attend, absolutely no pressure from anyone. So one day, his curiosity got the better of him. He approached the old man. "Kaka," he asked, "why do you follow the exact same routine every single day? Isn't it incredibly boring? Don't you ever get tired of it?" Gopal Kaka stopped his work, looked at Ryu with a kind, knowing smile, and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Beta," he said, his voice calm and steady, "habits are like farmers. What you plant today is what grows tomorrow. You might not see the results right away, but trust me, one day, your habits will either feed you, or they will starve you." The words were simple, but they landed on Ryu like a physical blow. He didn't fully grasp the depth of the message right then, but something inside him shifted. That night, sleep didn't come easily. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying all the times he had quit halfway, all his unfinished projects, all his abandoned resolutions. He thought about his desire for success. What if it wasn't about a sudden stroke of luck or a big, heroic moment? What if, just what if, success was simply about the small things you do every single day? What if it was just about habits? The next morning, something was different. Before the first rays of the sun had even touched the horizon, Ryu forced himself out of bed. His body screamed in protest, begging for the warmth and comfort of his blanket. "Sleep, please, just a little more," it pleaded. But Gopal Kaka's words echoed in his mind, "What you plant today grows tomorrow." He stumbled to the water pump, splashed cold water on his face, tied his worn-out shoes, and stepped out into the cool morning air. He decided to run. He could barely manage 200 meters before his lungs felt like they were on fire, gasping for air as if he'd just sprinted across the Thar Desert. Every muscle ached. But he didn't stop. He pushed through the pain. He kept going. Day 2, he did it again. It was just as hard. Day 3, again. By the time day 7 rolled around, his legs still throbbed with a dull ache, but he noticed something new. A flicker of strength. A tiny bit of endurance he didn't have a week ago. He felt a sliver of pride. He decided to add another habit. 1 hour of studying. Every single day. No excuses, no negotiations. If friends called, he'd say he was busy. If he felt lazy, he'd force himself to sit with his books. He told no one about his new routine. He made no grand announcements. He simply showed up for himself, day after day. Months slipped by. The seasons changed. One pleasant evening, Ryu was resting under the cool shade of the old banyan tree. He found himself smiling for no apparent reason. He felt different. His body felt lighter, more agile. His mind, once foggy and easily distracted, now felt sharp and clear. A steady stream of energy flowed through him all day long. The morning grogginess was gone. The afternoon lethargy was a distant memory. He hadn't even noticed the transformation happening because it wasn't a sudden event, it was a gradual evolution. Discipline had become natural. One of his friends, Sonu, who had witnessed this slow change, finally asked, "Ryu, what happened to you? You used to be the undisputed king of laziness. How did you transform like this?" Ryu laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh. "I didn't change in a day, my friend. I just repeated a few small, boring actions every single day, until they became a part of who I am." Soon, an opportunity knocked on his door. A notice for a government job recruitment went up in the village square. It involved a rigorous physical fitness test and a tough written exam. Ryu decided to apply. On the day of the physical test, the field was crowded with young men from his village and beyond. Some strutted around, brimming with overconfidence. Others huddled in corners, their faces pale with nervousness. Ryu just stood there, calm and centered. The whistle blew, and they were off. Many of the boys sprinted ahead, a burst of initial energy, but soon their pace faltered, and they grew tired, gasping on the sidelines. Ryu kept a steady, controlled pace, the same pace he had practiced for months. He wasn't the fastest, but he was the most consistent. His months of habit carried him forward. When his motivation wavered and his lungs burned, his discipline kicked in and took over. He passed the first round with ease. Next came the written exam. He saw other candidates frantically cramming information, their eyes darting through notes at the last minute. Ryu was already prepared. That 1 hour of study, every single day for months, had built a solid, unshakable foundation of knowledge. He walked into the exam hall, not with anxiety, but with quiet confidence. He cleared that, too. Weeks later, a letter arrived. Ryu's hands trembled as he opened it. The words seemed to jump off the page. "Congratulations. You have been selected." He stood frozen, the letter clutched in his hand. His mother stared at him, confused by his silence. He finally looked at her, tears welling up in his eyes, and whispered, Your son did it." She pulled him into a tight hug, her own tears of joy streaming down her face. The whole village celebrated his success. But perhaps the proudest person of all wasn't Ryu. It was Gopal Kaka. He placed a hand on Ryu's shoulder and said, "See, Beta. I told you. Motivation is the spark that starts the fire, but it's habit that keeps it burning when the initial flame fades." The moral of Ryu's story is something we often forget. We think that big, life-altering change requires some massive, heroic effort. But real, lasting transformation doesn't come from that. It comes from the small, almost insignificant habits that we perform daily. Not just once, not for a week, but consistently, until they become as natural as breathing. You don't need to completely overhaul your life overnight. Start with one small habit. Just one. Walk for 10 minutes. Read 5 pages of a book. Do 10 push-ups. Wake up 15 minutes earlier. Choose your habits, because in doing so, you are writing your future. Choose wisely. If this story inspired you, please don't let that inspiration just fade away. Let it be the spark. Start your one small habit today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. Because it's the small, consistent steps that lead to the biggest changes in life. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and tap that bell icon so you never miss another story.